Never asleep, I'm always dreaming. Seething shadows twist and creep just out of sight, hidden in the periphery of the mind, in the liminal spaces at the edge of certainty. Stinging eyes, aching muscles, racing thoughts that never settle. A long-lost desire for something more, something greater that once felt attainable. Would waking nightmares and restless delusions find me this night? What's the matter? Can't sleep again? A low, familiar voice asked from the darkness. Of course not. Every time I fall asleep, it feels like the walls have gotten thinner, I muttered back. I kept telling myself the bumps and creaks and subtle groans veiled in the night were just the building, the walls. But the more I told myself that, the less it seemed to help settle my racing heart. Muffled and distant noises had turned to faded whispers and pieces of words. Fucking neighbors. Had to be. Why is it always like this? I moaned begrudgingly. Well, there's always the pills. I hate taking them. All they ever do is make me sick. Then just try to relax. Focus on your breathing and calm your mind. Sleep will come sooner than you think. The faintest of noises in the silence grated in my ear, amplified in my head, and made me want to pound on the walls uncontrollably. Come on, you need your sleep. Just try. Time faded away from me as I rolled this way and that countless times over. Seconds, minutes, hours, it all squashed and stretched and distorted in my mind. My eyes shot open. I gazed blankly at the wall in the darkness. I lazily brought my index finger to the wall and began to write on it, in whatever part of the wall I could reach without disturbing my place. I scribbled words, phrases, pictures. Most of it I had forgotten moments later. After all, the wall remained blank. When I woke up, the sun had already been up for half the day. The mask was there on my dresser, just like he always was, no matter where I swear I left him. I shook my head around in an attempt to shake away the lethargy. This day was the same as any I could recall. The walls felt thinner. My mouth tasted sick. The bed was cold and empty. That mask stared back at me from the dresser. I got up and searched my disheveled room for some clothes, haphazardly cast behind boxes, under my work table, and over my easel. My clothes, with frayed edges and tattered bottoms, which skirted the line of acceptable, even to me. Every pair of pants was stained and splattered with paint long past, faded as much as it ever would. Only a few shirts matched. No new paint had graced my clothes in nearly a year. They were all dirty. Had been for a while, really. Suppose it's time for the laundromat. A sigh escaped under my breath. I grabbed the mask from my dresser, carried it with me, and set it down in the living room. I despised that noisy cutout world and the rehearsed interactions it had to offer. I wanted no part of it. Yet I still felt there had to be meaning worth finding out there in it. It's the only reason I still left. You really should go more often. I grabbed a piece of ham from the fridge and threw it on top of my laundry. I know. I'm going now, though. That should count for something. I answered back with another sigh as I opened the heavy wooden door. It creaked loudly with resistance. The laundromat was only a short walk away, really just a few blocks from my apartment. Passing by the dingy windows of other buildings, I kept my head down. It made it easier to keep moving forward. As I passed a familiar building with the slanted doorway just 1 block and 3 buildings down, I was greeted by a friendly yet coarse yowl. Hey there, buddy. I cooed to the stray alley cat as I pulled the ham from my laundry basket and tossed it at his feet. His matted, dark tabby fur hung loosely from his bony figure as he trotted over to his feast. His crooked whiskers twitched happily as he wolfed down his slice of ham, his notched left ear alert for danger. He was the closest thing I had to a pet in a long time. The great mountain overlooked and encircled the small, nameless town, casting it in a nearly perpetual shade and dimly realized half-light the majority of the year. There was a lively, dim wetness to the town, like the mossy side of a tree. The mountain stood as a stoic warden, a stern guardian, a commanding, oppressive ancient of green and shadow, indifferent to those that took refuge in its shade. The wash and clean laundromats, the flickering, miswired neon lights on the sign read. I still wasn't sure if it was supposed to be a joke or not. The place was unkempt and cheap in every way it could have been. Every time I came, there was a different machine out of order. I never saw anyone working on them. The decades-old candy machines remained barren and dusty, probably for the best. Today, there was a discolored puddle pooling up in the middle of the floor. I hoped it was from a broken machine. It was always pretty empty, no matter the time of day. It made it easier for me. As my laundry spun, my eyes stayed fixed on my tumbling clothes. However, my mind was elsewhere, more concerned with all the productive things I could have been doing if I hadn't been dragged away from my apartment. My concentration was broken by the only other person to walk through the door, this enchanting young woman I had seen here a few times before. I crooked my head up towards her as she walked past. My eyes passed over her laundry basket and latched to a pair of pink striped panties. I quickly returned my gaze to my laundry, feeling my face burn. I glanced back up as she loaded a washer. Her dark auburn hair gently caressed down her delicate, fair-skinned shoulders. As her eyes quickly caught mine for a moment, everything seemed to stop. The shine of the vibrant blue hue froze in my mind. Her laundry day clothes of dark sweatpants and white tank top still managed to accent the subtle curves of her slender frame. I quickly averted my gaze, paint me embarrassed. Our eyes had met before, sometimes accompanied by a brief smile. I had nervously returned them, but nothing more. Sometimes it was just easier to say nothing at all and let the world move on while I slowly faded into the whispering shadows. My dryer buzzed and made me jump, and I collected my clothes quietly without looking back at her. I walked back home, laundry basket in hand, and eyes stuck on the cracked sidewalk. My mind raced with all the things I could have said or done to stand out to that girl. The conversations we could have had, the jokes I could have told, all the ways I could have broken the ice and actually spoken to her. However, my head was soon filled with the horrible ways it all could have gone wrong, how embarrassed and ashamed I would have ended up. I switched on the lights to my dim apartment. The overhead light to the living room flickered in a violent, seizure-inducing way for a moment or two before it produced solid, consistent light. I found it comforting, novel even. The paint from the walls wasn't exactly peeling, but it was stained with mildew and splotchy spots that seemed to have just been painted over time and time again, long before I ever lived here. I searched through boxes of old art projects and supplies, chasing the feeling from the laundromat. I had to find something that called out to me. I had to find something meaningful, something to inspire, something to give me purpose. But nothing called out, only a void of emotional silence. Only incomplete projects that shunned me like I had shunned and abandoned them so long ago. My abandoned children. Some artist I am. All I saw around me now were the broken memories of things that once were or never could have been. It seemed like each time I closed my eyes, no matter how brief, The day before me had passed. The feelings, memories, and thoughts all blurred together into one long, continuous stream. All things behind me slowly faded into the mist. I'd stop and look back and would see only faded bits and pieces of what I could have sworn were yesterday's musings, only to realize months have passed. Would a sense of meaning solidify a moment and make it stable? Instead of wisps of mist and smoke, would I see a solid foundation? Or would it too crumble with enough time passed? I grabbed the mask and brought it with me to my room and set it on my work table. I always had this problem where my dreams, thoughts, and memories would get all mixed up in my head. When all of my life had become one collective haze, it was like searching through my memory for the shapes in the fog in order to get my bearings. My lethargy and confusion had blurred the lines of my fantasies and my memories. It's how the mask found its way to me all that time ago.